Hi everybody, this is Michaela Schick and this is my presentation for Module 5, Understanding My Community, which is Emerson Elementary. So Emerson Elementary there's been a school at this site since 1887, but our current building was built in 1961. We are known for being pretty high academically achieving within the KCK school district, and we're also known for being a small, very community-based school. So I'm going to talk about a public library, a community center, fire department, a park. All of these things are within walking distance of our school, which is really awesome. We also are known for having a veteran teaching staff. Most people, once they start working at Emerson, don't really leave, which is really cool. And then some different events that our school is kind of known for that help engage, especially with our parents, and things that our students really love about Emerson. So Are You Faster Than a Fifth Grader, Math Relays, and Battle of the Books are 3 different competitions in running, math, and reading that are built for 4th and 5th graders in the KCK school district. We've actually won all 3 of these events within the last year out of 30 elementary schools, so these are definitely things our students look forward to. Field day and tailgate lunch are really cool days where we can interact with parents. So field day, we also have the fire department come, and the fire department sprays water from the fire truck, so it's a great way to engage that community partner. And then for tailgate lunch, we all have a cookout in the fall, and it's a great time to interact with parents and families. Bridge to Argentine is when we do a 5th grade transition with Argentine Middle School, which is the middle school our students attend, which is a really awesome way to interact with our middle school in our community. And then we also take a trip to KU every year, which is really important for our students to be able to learn about college and kind of what that is. And then we also have a really close partnership with a public library, and we walk there for events at least twice a year, I would say. Customs and traditions. So we are in the Argentine neighborhood of Kansas City, Kansas. And the middle school is also called Argentine Middle School, so I can see how that could be confusing. It's a traditionally Hispanic neighborhood, but we also have a lot of African American students. It's a very tight-knit community with longtime residents who might have grown up there, and then some of them are now raising their kids there. But not everybody's a longtime resident, though, and I'll talk about that. As for events, we have the Silver City Days Parade, which is every October. It's a really big parade. It's held essentially in a park that's right in front of Emerson. So if you look in this picture, this building right here is our school. So this is basically on the grounds of our school, which is really cool. There's also a ton of public library events, like summer reading festivals, Dia de los Muertos festivals. There's a community center. If you could see through these trees, there's a community center basically right here. And they have workout classes and parenting classes and just kind of a way to engage community groups. Population characteristics of Emerson, we have 193 students, which is pretty small for a K-5 elementary school. We have around 50% male and female, but some classes have different distributions. Like for instance, my current class is really boy heavy. Racially, we are at 67% Hispanic students, 21% African American students, and 8% white students. So like I said, we're a historically Hispanic community, but we also have a lot of African American students. 96% of our students are economically disadvantaged, and I'll kind of talk about how that affects the community more in this presentation. 39% of our students are speaking another language at their homes, and then primarily that would be Spanish with our students. Most of our parents don't have college degrees, and some of them were educated outside the United States. A lot of our students were born in the United States, but maybe their parents or grandparents are immigrants, so they would be 2nd or 3rd generation immigrants, and so I think that kind of affects the education level of our families. So where do people get their information around Emerson? So one of the biggest ways that people get information is from social media, and specifically from Facebook. We have a pretty active Facebook page at our school. For instance, right now we're having an ice day tomorrow because there's an ice storm going on in Kansas City, and I would say most of our families are finding that out through Facebook. Letters and notes home from the school are also really effective ways to communicate, as well as phone blasts, which is basically like an automated phone message that goes to all of the families. Some of our families do watch TV news, and you'll hear the students talk about what they saw on the news last night. And then something that's also really big in this community is word of mouth. So a lot of our families live really close together in one particular apartment complex, or they are next door neighbors. So a lot of times word travels just through people talking to each other, which is really cool. Community groups. I mentioned that at the community center we have workout groups and health groups and parenting groups, which is a really awesome resource for the community. We also have Silver City Apartment Complex, and the families who live in this apartment complex are really, really close-knit. They'll babysit each other's kids, their kids ride the bus to school together, their kids are friends and almost like borderline family because they are so close. Families with similar immigration backgrounds, so our families who have immigrant parents, I feel like that kind of unites them in a way. And we also have a lot of families who come from the exact same town in Mexico. So that's really cool that so many of them have ended up in the same area of Kansas, of all places. So that definitely unites those families. We also have this blog that is run by community members, not necessarily parents, but community members who are very critical of the KCK school board, so that's kind of like a group. And then we also have churches in the area, primarily Christian churches. The leadership. So we have district leadership with the school board and the superintendent and central office administrators. We also have school leaders, so our principal, Brett Bernard, and our family and community engagement specialist, Lucia Requenes. And then we also have community leaders. So the Murguia family, one of the sisters was a city councilwoman, I believe, and the other sister is just a really active advocate in the community. We have faith leaders that some of our families really rely on their faith communities. And then we also have the community center staff. For instance, I know there's one lady at the community center who runs a Zumba class a couple times a week, and she is definitely a community leader. So the district leaders have the most power, obviously, over the school, but they also have less immediate impact on our neighborhood. So they're kind of far removed. They're like 20, 25 minutes away, not necessarily truly community members. And then the school leaders, our principal and our family and community engagement specialist, I feel like are the most powerful leaders in our community. They're really trusted and they're really respected, and they're the primary problem solvers. So when people have an issue with a school issue, they come to these people, but also when they just have issues in their family, they come to those two people. Community leaders, like the lady who runs Zumba at the community center, are the people who truly bring the community together, and they're really important in the community too, along with our school leaders. But like I said, at times there are some people in the community who are really critical of the district. As far as the economic conditions of the school and district, the district is generally underfunded. So we receive a lot of Title I allocations because of impoverished families. And then we also passed a new bond in 2016 for building improvements, but not specifically for Emerson's building, just for buildings in the district in general. Community conditions. So I would say that the community is pretty impoverished. Obviously, you saw the economic statistics for the school. But there's a lot of unemployed or underemployed community members who aren't really able to support their family the way that I'm sure that they would probably like to be able to. We have a lot of people who live in Section 8 housing in our area, and the big industry in the community is the BNSF Railway Company. We have a rail yard pretty close to the school, so that's a major employment and business center for the community. But generally, a lot of our smaller businesses are struggling. A lot of them can't seem to stay in business for very long. So it's definitely a struggling area economically. As far as political structure, we have the Gannon case, which has been in the Kansas Supreme Court now for several years. KCK was a major plaintiff in this case, and Emerson was actually used as an example to the Kansas Supreme Court of what happens when you pour a lot of money into a struggling school, because Emerson went through a redesign and a major effort several years ago, about 10 years ago, to improve the school. KCK has less property taxes going into their schools than surrounding areas, both in the suburbs, like in Shawnee Mission or Olathe, but also within Wyandotte County, we have less property taxes going to the schools than, say, Turner, Piper, or Bonner Springs would. We also have our former superintendent, Dr. Lane. She serves on the new Governor's Committee for Education, and we also have several members of our school board who serve in the state legislature. As far as social tensions, I feel like there aren't a ton within the Argentine community. There's some racial tension, which primarily stems from many of our African American families are living in the Silver City apartments versus many of our Hispanic families are living in like the surrounding houses. I would say that could be a source of tension, but I don't really see it between the students at school. There are also some drug and gang-related issues in the community, but again, this isn't something I really see at school. at least not at the elementary level. Within KCK, there's some racial and religious tensions, just based on the fact that you have so many different races of people and so many different religions that people practice in KCK. And then obviously I talked about there's those frustrations with the school board and district leadership. Outside of KCK, people tend to kind of look down on people who live in KCK. There's some racial prejudices, immigration prejudices, class-based prejudices. There's kind of a lot that kind of causes KCK to be kind of looked down on in the broader Kansas City community. So when people need more information, where do they go? We have some newspapers that report on KCK and Wyandotte County specific issues. Again, there's that Effective KCK School Board blog, which is kind of like almost like a watchdog blog for the school board. We have the district website and board minutes, which are accessible to anybody. I get a lot of information from the KSDE lookup site. There's a lot of demographic information on there that I think is helpful. And then we also have a great public library in our community, which I mentioned, where families are able to go and access technology and access information that they might not be able to otherwise. Multicultural issues. So being a primarily Hispanic community, we have some holidays that are celebrated, which is awesome. The library hosts a Dia de los Muertos festival every year, which is really cool. Also, all communication from our school comes home in English and in Spanish so that our families can for sure understand what we're trying to communicate to them, and we use interpreters whenever we have like meetings or conferences. Teachers are at Emerson and in KCK as a whole technically are mostly white and don't live in KCK. So we have like I think one teacher who actually lives in KCK that teaches at our school, and we're almost entirely white. So we have to learn to be respectful of our students and the differences in culture that they may have compared to us. And then also I would just bring up that a lot of our families are really concerned about immigration policy and immigration status of their loved ones. That can be a really big source of anxiety for some of our students. Like pretty much any school district, KCK has a top-down organization going from the school board all the way down to the school staff. There's a current power struggle going on between two halves of the school board, which has led to that blog and community resistance against the district leadership. There's also kind of a disconnect between the district leadership and the schools and the families, people not feeling like the district leadership is listening to them, that kind of thing. I feel like that's less of a factor at Emerson just because we're so small. If people have issues, they get brought up and people are generally pretty satisfied. And like I said, our principal and our family and community engagement specialist are among the most respected leaders in our community. So usually we don't have those sorts of issues. As far as measuring public opinion, the district hosted many listening and learning tours this year at every high school. I don't feel like they were well attended by parents and community members. I feel like they were mostly attended by teachers who wanted to voice frustrations. I was also noticing recently that we have a ton of reviews on our district's Facebook page. And I'm kind of wondering if anybody at the district is looking at those or taking those into consideration. They should. And then we also have the blog and the resistance issue that I think, really covered at this point. But I'm really not sure that that's the opinion of everyone in KCK or if it's just a very loud and vocal minority. Emerson, we have event surveys. So how did you feel about the anti-bullying event that we had that go home to families? We have a lot of individual conversations between staff members, especially our family and community engagement specialist and parents. And then we also are working on a parent climate survey right now. So this is something I'm working on right now. So it's upcoming at Emerson. I think I'll probably do it via paper form. That seems like the easiest way to get a response from parents right now. I'm going to encourage people to fill it out in personal conversations and phone blasts. And we're going to use topics that have been brought up previously with staff members in personal conversations with parents to guide what questions we ask. And then I think it's easier to start with the parents and then broaden to the rest of the community, just because parents are a little bit easier to access right now, and then use that data to create our school goals. Thank you so much for learning about my community today.